Hello, my name is Mariel Galvez. Thank you for tuning in to Power to the People podcast. What you are about to see is a pre-recorded conversation between three of our segment hosts, Lucero, Tony, and myself. We hope you gain some insight as to why we decided to start a podcast dedicated to uplifting youth voices. Welcome back to another episode of Power to the People podcast. I am your host. My name is Mari, and with me today I have
your host Tony.
Again, do that line one more time.
Your co-host Tony.
Okay.
And your other co-host, Lucero.
Co-host. I have a co-host and a co-horse today. We just got off a really sidetracked conversation, so we're a little giddy right now, so audience be warned. Oh my god. I just lowered my seat and it did it way faster than I thought it was going to. Anyway, today we are having a very meaningful conversation where, in all of the honesty we can give to you all, is that we are giving most of the floor to Tony. Because this subject is very he's like, I didn't know about this. This subject is very close to our hearts, and although we will be participating, we will be doing a lot of learning as well. And as what we were going to talk about was happening and continues to happen, but when it was most prominent in the media and in our day-to-day lives, there was a sense of feeling powerless. There was a sense of not being able to do enough for the Black Lives Matter movement. The Black Lives Matter movement has existed for many years and will continue to exist for many years, given the system that we are currently living in. But it is not a trend, and that is what we are here to talk about today. Black Lives Matter is not a trend, and very unfortunately and very enraging how brands, companies, schools all took it as a way to suddenly be supportive of this movement, though it was widely criticized in its much smaller occurrences. And we can say smaller, but all of the Black Lives Matter events have been huge and meaningful and impactful. But now, during this time, we were all stuck at home with nothing to do. And so people took that as a chance to, hey, I'm suddenly going to be a political activist, or I'm suddenly going to support this movement because I'm bored at home, and we're going to make it a trend. Okay? And yeah. Go ahead.
Which is not what should have happened.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's a good thing that there's more awareness to it, but it's, like you said, it's not a trend, and it's not just something to do because you're bored.
I mean, I don't even like the word political activists, because a lot of these people aren't even activists. I mean, you already know how I feel about the word being thrown around like activist. Yeah. And so many people call themselves activists, and it's like, you're not an activist. Like, I'm not even an activist, right? And I do more than most people. And it's like, that's one thing that's like actually going around right now is the whole thing of like, you're putting yourself in front of the movement. Like, are you really here for the movement, or are you here just to be known? You just want to be known as an activist, right? Want to go down the history books. And it's like, it's not about us. It's about our people. It's about the movement, right? And I think a lot of people have kind of forgotten that. A lot of people who were leaders forgot about that. They just wanted their face on the news. They wanted their face on the movement, on everything. And that's one thing that did not ever sit right with me. And that's the one reason why I never like participated in that at all. Like, I was never one to be the face of the movement. I never want to be the person up there speaking, because it's like, it's not about me, right? And that's just one thing that I just had a problem with, especially people posting about it and like saying like, hey, I'm with the Black Lives Matter movement, but then one, don't even know what Black Lives Matter is or stands for. Two, haven't read or anything about it. Like, it's all about, like, it's good that you want to be an ally, but you have to be an ally in the right way. Not just saying, I support Black Lives Matter. I'm for Black people. Just saying that isn't enough. If that was enough, we'd have posters everywhere and to be fine. No,
Yeah.
it's about educating yourselves. One, not just educating yourself when there's a Black person around and having them educate you, but educating yourselves on your own time, educating your friends and family, holding themselves accountable, holding yourselves accountable. Because, and I want to really say hold ourselves accountable because of the fact that we all have like anti-Blackness in us. Like that's just, we grew up in this society, so of course we would have these society ideologies in us, instilled in us growing up, right? And this is one thing I just saw, like so many people just faking it, just wanting to go with the flow, and it just did not sit right with me. Cause like directly afterwards, no one was talking about it anymore. There was no post about it or anything like that. And even if there are still posts about it, you can meet those people and talk to them, and they're just like the people that they're saying they're against. And that one was really interesting to me to see. I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts on that last part?
Well, first, Tony, you said you don't consider even yourself activist and that no one is an activist. What do you consider is an activist?
I think an activist, well, first off, an activist has to be, I think you have to have a level of intelligence and awareness. You have to know exactly the system that you're fighting against, right? You can't claim to be an activist and you don't even know what you're active against or active for. Like, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So one is it's about that.
Okay.
Two, I think is about like being active, extremely active, right? There's a level of activeness that goes into it, not just protesting, but creating organizations, right? Talking to these leaders, right? Like having your people come and having them stand up there and not stand up there and talk, but invite them to the table, or even in a sense break down that table, right? Because that table shouldn't even be there, right? So I think an activist is a certain level of, I think, is a certain level. Like I said, I don't want to keep saying active, but that's really what it is. It's just being extremely active. Also in the community that they're saying you're trying to help, like you have to be extremely active and extremely knowledgeable. Why do you think like all of these activists in the past, like they called Angela Davis a scholar, right? Like you have to be extremely knowledgeable because you have to understand there's intersectionality in all of this, right? You can say, like I know for me, like right now I'm trying to fight against socioeconomic injustice, right? But then when you start researching more into it, you're like, oh, there's also another thing that's wrapped up in it is the school to prison pipeline. Oh snap, another thing that's wrapped up in it is prison abolition. But if you don't even know that, you can say, oh, I'm an activist all the time, but then you're supporting something that hurts your people, right? And I think that's what makes you an activist, is being really aware and knowledgeable, and then also like really acting on it.
I think I would agree and also a little bit disagree with you, Tony. I think that with activism, I agree that you do need to be really knowledgeable and not just be labeling yourself an activist because it's cool or whatever. But I think that you don't have to know everything. You don't have to be the best activist to be considered an activist. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I would agree. I would agree and disagree. I recently got told by one of my old mentors, whom I love very much. I'm pretty sure I read her text aloud in one of the Power Bits episode that I'm doing. But she said, I told her, like, I don't feel like I'm being an activist to my fullest potential. Whereas before, I would show up to rallies, I would show up to sit-ins, I would show up and boycott things. But given the pandemic and given my just my experiences with the pandemic, I was not comfortable enough to show up to the marches, to show up to the demonstrations, and I felt bad. I felt like I wasn't doing enough, and I felt like I could not call myself an activist. And what she told me was that my existence itself outside of the stereotype, outside of the statistics, are an activism. Just my being in the business school, being an accounting major, working at a bank, my ability to do those things regardless of this facade that society has put down that says somebody who looks, talks, and breathes like I do can't do any of those things itself is radical, is activism. And I know some people have harder definitions of both radical and activist. And I think when you do what you can to show that you are not the stereotype and you are not that racist label that has been put on you, I think that in itself is an act of activism. Would I call myself an activist? Though I think for me that's still really up in the air. And the purpose of this podcast, right, is to show, and we have that in our bio description, to show youth activism across Colorado and eventually expand further than just Colorado. So can we call ourselves activists? Maybe. Some people like to. Can we call the things we do acts of activism? I think yes.
Yeah, I will respond to both those because, like, I really like what you guys said. Yeah, Lucero, I think what you said is true. I think that goes back to my favorite quote that I always say, and it was from Maya Angelou, which is, I think it goes like, it's basically, okay, I can't say word for word, but basically it's like, do what you can now, right? And learn more. Once you know more, do better, right? And I think, I'm not saying like for an activist you have to know everything, but I think for an activist you have to have that curiosity to be able to know more and keep knowing more, because you have to have that intelligence and knowledge to say, one, to like break down these systems, you have to have a clear knowledge of the systems, and so you just have to keep educating yourself. So I do agree with you on that. And when what Madi said, I do agree with that as well, as far as like Black joy and, well, not only just being Black, but for me, I'm just gonna say Black joy and, you know, existing and all that is already revolutionary in itself and radical in itself. But also, I think, in a sense, like when I think of an activist, I'm thinking of someone who is, I think of people like Angela Davis, MLK, Malcolm X, you know, people of that caliber, right?
What
And
about what about the people that worked alongside them though? Would you consider them activists?
yeah, because they were extremely active. Yeah, because they was extremely active. They were knowledgeable in what they did as allies, right? They learned how to be allies. There were times when like they would teach people how to do a proper sit-in, how to protest properly and be safe, right? So that's why I say there's like a level of knowledge that comes with it. Because even if you don't know, there's one thing that I heard from this podcast, and that was what happened in these protests where they there were a lot of people who didn't know proper tactics of protest, how to protest and how to riot effectively. And that is the reason why, even though certain things got done, nothing really changed, right? And I mean, it's going to happen over and over again where certain things will not change, but there was people who didn't have proper tactics, right? And so you can't call yourself an activist, but you don't even know the tactics. You don't even know, you know, a lot of things that you're fighting against, right? So that's why I say like there's a level of knowledge that has to come with it, because you can't just be an ordinary person just saying like, hey, I'm a lead people, right? I'm gonna sit up here and I'm gonna preach and sit at the table, but you don't even know what your people need.
Yeah.
Right?
Can I just make a like quick interjection there? So with again, I'm going to keep saying this because I think it's my favorite thing in the world to say, with the era of the internet right now and how our whole lives revolve around that. Do you think the same can be said, that thing about not knowing how to protest? Do you think the same can be said about things today? Or, and I think I'm going to respond a little bit to my own question right now, is the reason this movement that's happening right now that continues to happen today. I believe a couple days ago it was said that 100 protests have happened since the death of George Floyd. And they're still happening today. They have not, the media has just stopped covering them, but they're still happening. And I don't think the same can be said about people today who are trying to peacefully protest. For example, the vigil that there was a couple weeks back for Elijah McClain was peaceful. There was violins, there was children, there was dogs, and the police still threw smoke bombs. People would still get pepper sprayed even if they are doing everything correctly, right? Because we spread that information. You can just make a Instagram, Facebook, Twitter post and be like, when you go out to protest, do this, this, and this. Do not do this, this, and this, right? So I think what makes it so enraging now, not that it wasn't enraging when it all began, but is we're doing everything right, and people have gotten to the point of rioting because it's absurd that you are protesting peacefully for so long. You have taught people how to protest people. You have taught people to peacefully protest. You have taught yourself. You have organized. You have done everything in a manner that is respectful, and you are still being disrespected. And not just disrespected, but violently tossed out. That is the most enraging and heartbreaking thing about what's going on right now. Is in the era of the internet, there's no way you don't know how to do it, yet we're still being pushed back with violence. And the people doing it don't get consequences. It's just another Tuesday for them.
That's true. I agree with that. But also, I think, I don't know. I just say I agree with that, dude. And I said, dude, again. I told you. I told you. But no, I fully agree with that. I mean, even what you said about the anger part, it's like, that's so many people got mad at me for this too when I said, like, I support the riots, because I do. Like, at the end of the day, like, and I'm not sitting here like trying to convince people that the riots are good or like that. You can have your own opinion. But at the end of the day, I think that, well, one, like, we are angry. We are tired of not being heard. If you're not going to listen to the peaceful protest, then you're going to listen to us when we fuck your shit up. That's just how it's going to be, right? And I understand people saying, like, what about the small businesses and stuff like that? I think that also can go into part of the tactics part, right? Of which businesses you would hit and you would not hit, right? There was some businesses were hit that wasn't supposed to be hit, right? Some tactics were very faulty because it was people trying to make something up that wasn't the right tactic, which was, hey, everyone, let's pass on social media. If you're a Black-owned business, just put Black Lives Matter on your thing, and boom, we're not gonna do anything to you. That wasn't really a good tactic. That was kind of a really bad tactic, right? But of the simple fact that I don't think rioting is bad. You can, whatever you want to do, that's fine, right? But I also think that after the rioting, after the protest, now what? And that's the one thing that people did not do or did not think about. That's the reason why it was a trend, right? Two, also, there was something that you brought up that I thought was really interesting, but I totally forgot, and I wanted to discuss on it.
Was it the internet?
Yes. I was one of those people that said, how can you be so uneducated in the age of the internet, right? But there's also this one thing called, I'm going to say it's so wrong, but I think it's called the Otterbox effect, right? And that whole thing of like, if you follow the people that you wanted, that like you follow a certain type of people, right? So you can follow everyone that doesn't have any of those tactics or anything like that says, hey, this is how you do it right, or this is how you protest right, or this is what Black Lives Matter mean, it's what this mean. And so we get angry of like, how are you still uneducated in this time? But not a lot of people are following those pages or those people. You can go look for those pages. Yes, that's true. and I'm not standing up for the people who are uneducated. There's books out there. You can find it with a little bit of research, especially with the hashtags. But I think sometimes it doesn't even hit people's radars, and they think they're doing the right thing, but they're not. And we have to realize we're just a little bit. We come from a community that's a little bit more woke than others. I'd say. I know for me, I did. Like, I come from a community with a lot of like, minorities, Black people, people who like know what the hell they're talking about, right? And so for me, it's like, oh yeah, everyone's with Black Lives Matter, right? And then when I go up to voters, like, oh shit, it's so many people who are uneducated. So many people don't even know what certain things mean because it never hit their radar.
Right. And to some degree, I don't understand. If we were, I'm going to use the Marvel analogy. If we were in a Marvel movie or DC movie, whatever your superhero movies of preference are, would the villain tell the hero, or would the villain tell the antagonist or the protagonist? Would the villain tell the protagonist, stop using violence? It's not going to get us anywhere. But what does the villain mainly do in movies, right? And I agree that in many situations, you cannot fight fire with fire and expect a good outcome. But what about when the whole fucking system is against you? And everything you believe in and everything you stand for and absolutely every inch of who you are.
Burn the shit down.
Then what do, right? And Portland is still...
And Tony, I think it was in one of your Just Everything podcasts. Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry, Muddy, go ahead.
Sure. Sorry. And Portland is still in Portland is still in riots.
I put in air quotes because that's the title.
Oh, and I was saying like it's just everything, but it's not. I was like, oh, my whole brand.
I didn't mean it like that.
Tony has another podcast called Just Everything Podcast. We will plug that in the comments if y'all want to listen to that as well, because they are very, very good. But as I was saying, Portland is still in riot. People are still being mistreated. Many of these protests started peacefully. Cops are taking people in unmarked vans, and they are not saying that they are cops. And it's scary. It's frustrating. And how do you respond to this? How do you respond to that? Don't do it. Don't protest for the right to live, for the right not to be mistreated in this country, for the right not to be racially profiled at every step of your life, in school, at work, even that internalized racism that we hold for ourselves. Because there is so much learning that our own communities of color have to do to unlearn our internalized racist behaviors.
Mm-hmm. So what I was going to bring up was, again, Trevor Noah, because I love that guy. But, and Tony was talking about it in one of his podcasts when he was doing Just Everything that I was listening to, and how he brought up the reason that people are so upset about rioting is because it's against the social contract that we've created. And so stealing is against that contract, right? But at the same time, when that contract also says that you don't have to respect someone if they are of darker skin color, if they speak a different language, if they come from a different country or nation or whatever, you have to like pick and choose your battles, I think. And also like that contract is so messed up, and it was written by a certain kind of person to benefit a certain kind of person. Mm-hmm. So when somebody rips up that contract and goes against it, the people who are benefiting from it and created it, they get mad. And I don't know, Tony, if maybe you can talk about it better or talk about it more, because I know that was what you guys talked about in your podcast, but it just made me think of that.
And can I just quickly, before you go off, Tony, because I know you about to go off, there are so many white passing POC who believe that contract is, and I say white passing in air quotes because then there's white passing as if your skin tone is very light, and then there's white passing as I'm very brown, but I got the straight A's in high school, I'm doing really well for myself, I'm earning X amount of dollars per year, so I'm not that kind of POC. I am a higher level POC, and this social contract benefits me too. I swear it does, because the person that it does benefit told me so. But it doesn't really.
Nice.
All right, Tony.
Damn, bro, you said so much fast. I forgot what I was gonna say.
Oh,
I was like,
ooh. Have y'all seen? I'm sorry. Have y'all seen the meme of that one girl? So Designer is like doing an interview, and she thinks that he's rapping because she's from China. So she thinks that Designer is rapping, and he's like, yeah, and she's like in the back, and she's like, and he's just talking.
No, I have not seen that. That's hilarious.
I wonder if I can insert that in there, but
aww.
Anyway, go.
I remember it. It was so adorable.
Yeah, she was like, and he was like, I think all he was saying was like, yeah, ni hao, how are you guys doing? Happy Chinese New Year. And she was like, I'm sorry. I know we were super serious, but like memes. That's my brain. My brain is memes.
I love
I'm sorry.
Oh man.
Did I distract you too much, Tony?
No. Shit. What were we talking about? I'm so sorry.
Well, I had
what exactly did you say?
Talk more about, or I mean, basically we were talking about the
social contract.
Oh. Wait, hold on.
Dun dun dun. Dun 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 dun. We will beat your ass if you try to hurt Tony. We will beat your. Oh, we were trying to scare them off in case it was an intruder. I will find you and I will kill you. Don't touch my Tony.
Lucero, why are you looking like that?
She said, I will kill you.
Facts. Marty's a ride or die.
Mama Marty is ready.
Is that a push thing?
Yeah. This is the closest thing I have to me. Hey, this could do a lot of damage to a major artery.
That's true.
I probably shouldn't say that on camera.
What major artery you're going for, which it sounds like Marty does. Or just like the eyeball, incapacitate someone real quick, and then you can like really do some damage.
Punch your throat and they could probably suffocate.
Oh yeah, that's always, you always supposed to punch the Adam's apple. If like you're fighting a guy or something, punch that
Aim for the throat, aim for the balls. Pop, pop.
Ow.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That
Cover your throat when you fight.
Facts. No, but I mean
sorry.
It's so crazy how like so many white people want to say writing is bad. But it's so funny because that's the same race of people that went and burned down all those black banks and stuff that was in Tulsa because of some shit that didn't even went down, right? It was just fueled from racism, right? But they was like, oh, but you can't burn down our buildings. But that's the only way you're going to hear us, right? Because it's if I like, I mean, Lucero, you said it the best. Like, all I'm doing was just be reiterating you of that simple thing of like, you broke the contract, right? Multiple times throughout history.
But we didn't even sign that contract.
Exactly. Right. Like, that was created by you guys for you guys, right? Not for us. And one thing you have to understand is people don't understand, why are you writing? That you just look like animals. It's like, no. What you don't even understand, one thing is writing is actually very effective in a capitalistic society who only cares about money. Fun fact. But listen to the fact that and you're like, oh, looting, blah 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 blah. Don't nobody give a fuck about no Gucci bags, bro. Like, what do you what do you mean? Like, yeah, there's probably going to be some bad seeds who wants to go out there and do that, but like, and there's also some white people who or pro-Trump supporters who do go out to these protests and try to make it seem bad by starting something,
Instigate.
right? Because I do know one of the protests I was in, there was a guy who was going around pushing people, right, trying to start something so that we look like the instigators and stuff like that. But it's like, or they'll go up to the cops and like start doing shit, right?
In the name of BLM.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like they would be in the crowd, so you don't need, so you can't like really dissociate them from them because so group of people and you see one guy doing something, right, and then he starts getting hit or whatever with the police, and now everyone's like, oh, we don't even know what happened, but like, that guy's with us and he's getting beat by the cops. We got to go help him, right? Or we got to leave or something, or the cops are like, oh shit, something went down. Now it's all chaos, right? So that would be some tactics that the other side would use against us, right? And that's one of the arguments of we shouldn't riot. But I mean,
and can I just add, Black Wall Street happened 99 years ago. That's a really short time, y'all. That's really short time. It makes 99. Yeah, not even 100 years yet. Not even the full, what is it, a century? Yeah, not even the full century. 99 years ago in 1921, the Black Wall Street burnings, riots happened. And then there's the movement, and then there was the movement of the 60s, right? Many of our Black brothers and sisters joined us for the Chicano movement as well. And there were so many other demonstrations that happened from then to now and before that. So it really hasn't gone away. You know what I'm saying? And it's not going to go away. And I had another thing that I was going to say, but I completely sidetracked myself by trying to guess what
goes away, right? That's the whole point of everything, is that we hope that will start to change their mindsets and their actions and systemic injustices that are embedded in our everyday lives. Like, that's what we're trying for. We're trying for change.
Yeah.
The unfortunate thing is like you were talking about, I mean, 99 years ago, but even before that, and since then, we've been fighting day by day by day to make the changes that we were promised and that should have been complete years and years ago.
And we don't just fight in the streets, we don't just fight by writing. We don't just fight by protesting. We fight in legislation. I was there, okay? I was on the Senate and House floors observing how hard we fight for equal rights, for Black Lives Matter, for, how do you say it without cursing? For all of this, right? For all of it, for the movement. And we're shut down in places of power. We're shut down in the streets. So what else are we supposed to do, right? And you can say, you can protest peacefully. We tried that. You can take it to your legislator. We tried that. You take it to the White House. We tried that. We're trying everything.
At some point, people just need to up and say, like, yeah, we just don't want you to have power over us. Because that's what they're saying when they say, you're not protesting the right way, right? You're protesting too peacefully, or you're disrespecting us by doing that. You're disrespecting us by doing this.
Yeah. And it's not that we need to live in America where protests don't happen and we keep our system, right? We need to live in an America where the system isn't benefiting from us being afraid of protesting because of repercussions. We need to live in an America where protests don't happen because the system is fair, to the point where we don't have to do that. That's what we're fighting for. Not power over anyone else, but equality and equity and making sure that everybody has access to the resources that they need to succeed. And minorities are put at the bottom of the list. We work and we fight really, really, really hard for a system that's against us. It just is. And the people in this, on this video call right now, we are the exception. We are the exception. And we're told that this social contract is going to benefit us because I'm in the business school, Tony engineering, Lucero is also pursuing a secondary education, or not secondary education, an education degree, right? We are the lucky ones, the ones that get to stand before you and talk about these things. We are fighting for those of us in the positions that we have now and those of us who didn't make it. And those of us who have the system stacked against us and will have the system stacked against us until they reach the grave. It should not be that way.
Yeah. And there's two things I want to touch on. One is, I mean, one thing that Marty said and that Lucero also said was about hope and, you know, if things are going to change or not. To any like body out there that wants to be an activist or anyone out there that just wants change, one is remember that change, like the change we're fighting for, we're not going to see in this lifetime probably. We're trying to make it inch it closer and closer and closer so we can get there. But also remember one thing. That's one thing that one advice that I've heard. I forgot from where because it was on the internet. But it was one saying that this woman has said, and she said, if you ever have trouble like with the idea of creating change, stop thinking about the biggest outcome that can happen, the best outcome that can happen. Look right there in your community, right? Because I think that's the one thing we forget is like, oh, we want racism to end everywhere and stuff like that, right? But even then, like, also take a look at your community. If changing the world in itself is too big, then talk to your community, because even that right there is revolutionary in itself. Changing yourself is already revolutionary. Changing your community is something that's amazing, right? So I think for anyone who wants to tackle any type of change, you can start with your community and then build up. There's no, and even though I keep saying this is what activism means to me, remember that's my definition of an activist, right? Build your own definition of an activist, right? And at the end of the day, remember there's more than one way to create change. It's like at the time, back in the day, we had people who riot, people who protest, people who sit in all at the same time. We have people who were doing it in the system of legislation act, and people who are doing it outside the system of let's just dismantle this whole thing and tear it all down and build something from scratch. I'm one of those people that want to tear it all down and rebuild it from scratch. There's other people who don't. That's okay. Like at the end of the day, we're all working together for the same exact goal. And it's not about who beats us there first. It's about whichever one is going to make that change. So just to everyone out there who wants to be an activist, remember those two things. That's just what I want to say.
And to add on to that, Tony, since at the beginning we were defining activism, like you said, like make your own definition, or even don't care about the definition, don't care about the labels, care about the actions that you are doing to, like you said, get us all to that goal. Despite the definitions, despite the labels, as long as you're fighting for what is right, for what will get us to a better place, then you're doing what you're supposed to and you're helping.
And I love that you brought up, Tony, you stole the words right. Well, you didn't steal them, but you took the words right out of my mouth with the start with yourself, right? Because I know, and to my family, if you guys are watching, I love y'all, but you know we got issues. I think us as the Hispanic Latino people have issues because we've got a lot of internalized racism coming from colonialism, colonization, and I should not even be speaking Spanish right now, or not right now, but as the person that I am today, because I come from two of the most indigenous states in Mexico. And I only say that because the brief history of who I am, I guess, but also I come from a long, extensive line of internalized racism, of anti-Blackness. And what I can do is start with me and make sure that the family that I raise one day is also anti-Black and anti-racist and proactively using their time to fight against it. That's what I can do.
Black.
Huh?
You say your family.
Oh,
Anti-Black.
it's not anti-Black. I'm sorry. I need to make sure that the family that I raise and the generation that comes from me, right, is actively anti-racist and is not anti-Black.
Yeah.
That's what I can do. That's what I can do to be an activist, to have that activism within me to support the movement, is to make sure that, okay, maybe it's really hard to change the people even that I live with, even my own family members. It's hard to change their opinions because of, we can argue how they grew up or what their ideals are. It's hard to change somebody's opinion once they've made up their mind. What I can do is educate the people that come from me, the people that I constantly interact with, right? Lucero, the kiddos that you're going to teach eventually, right? The family that I'm going to raise, the people that I interact with at my job, all of that. That is what you can actively do, right? And again, even if it's just changing yourself and educating yourself, that is a huge part to it, because now there's one more person, and maybe more than one, who are going to listen to these perspectives, who are going to keep fighting. And like you said, Tony, we might not see these changes in our lifetime. We probably won't, because we have so much work to do. We have so much learning, so much educating, so much unlearning in order to see any sort of progress. And I think right now is what's going on with the Black Lives Matter movement right now, and how it's been made a trend and then just dropped a couple weeks later, is a big testament to why we have to keep going, why we never can stay silent on these issues, because they are not trends, they are not phases, they're not. It's real, and it's going to affect someone in your lifetime, whether you think about it or you don't.
And anyone who wants to be a politician, please don't do what the politicians did during this whole Black Lives Matter thing. I know you guys probably seen that photo of some of the lawmakers like kneeling down and putting up a fist saying, "We stand for Black Lives Matter. We need change now." It's like, you guys are the ones who make the laws. Like, if you want change, why aren't you like helping us? Like, why aren't you doing it? You know what I mean? Don't be those people. Don't put on performative acts. Don't do none of that shit. Like, if you're really here to make a change, make a change. Continue to educate yourself. Continue to unlearn, because that's what we're doing here, right? At the end of the day, also surround yourself with people who think differently than you as well. Surround yourself with people who's going to hold you accountable. If I had yes men around me, then I mean, I would never continue to grow mentally, right?
Yeah.
But make sure you have people right there that's going to challenge you. And if you're going into law, right, educate yourself too, because I mean, there's a lot of people who wants to be lawyers for the right reason, and who goes in there and does the exact opposite they want to do.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know, just something that I really wanted to put out there, because I mean, there's just internalized racism and internalized internalized everything, man. Racism, internalized sexism, internalized transphobia, homophobia, all that shit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, at the end of the day, like, we gotta unlearn all of that shit, you know? Because if you think you're not anti-racist or if you think you're not anti-black or anything like that, please, you gotta like truly look into yourself and just really look at what was taught to you, because you cannot expect to be brought up in a world like this, in a society like this, who continues to teach it to our young that you're not that. Like, there's no one out here that's not that. Like, even the most prominent leaders had to unlearn, right? And that's okay. You know what I mean? And hold yourself to any standard you want to, right? It's okay if you don't know a lot. It's okay if you don't know everything, because at the end of the day, we're going to continue to learn. That's the reason why we are self-educating, right? That's the reason why, um, the more we go, the more we realize even more of the system, because these are not taught to us. These are not. They don't want us to know these things, because if we know the system, dismantle the system, you know, then all of a sudden, boom, we can make that change. We can make the change they don't want us to see, or they don't want us to make, right?
Mm-hmm.
Additionally, I think also challenge yourself.
Mm-hmm.
If you could make a society that was different, what would that society look like? Because I think as we are now starting to want to make these changes, we got to really ask ourselves, what does that society look like? Because there's a lot of people out here. And I think I said this in our first episode, and I want to reiterate it. You cannot say to people like, hey, you're not anti-black enough, you're not this enough, we're just going to leave you behind. Not everyone can come to the promised land. It's like, what does that look like in practice?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? If
Mm-hmm.
you're anti-capitalism, what does that look like in practice? If you're
Mm-hmm.
anti-whatever, what does that look like in practice? Like,
Mm-hmm.
really think about the society you're trying to make and see, because that's when you can really see your anti-blackness or anti-whatever. You can really see, when you think of that, what would that society look like? And just see how similar it is to the society we already have.
Mm-hmm. And oh my God, I had it and then it left.
That made me think of like intent or impact over intent. Like at the end of the day, your actions and how they affect whatever, that's what matters. So no matter your intent, think about like your actions and how does that look like in action? And what does that do for us?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Whew. My
And also
heart.
think about like the whole conversation with defunding the police and how the entire justice system is like totally not what it's supposed to be. So when we say like
To say it nicely.
yeah, that I'm the nice one in the podcast. But when we say defund the police, like how radical is that? Because yeah, we're starting to see how the system works against us. Like we're not blind to that anymore, and we want it different now. And that's what they're upset about, right? Is that we're smart. We know what is going on here, and we know that we don't deserve this.
Exactly.
And I think it's a true testament to how much growth you can do as a person, and how much you can educate yourself while still having your own opinion. Our conversation at the beginning of this, how do you define activism? I heard all three of us say a different thing, and we're still going to live by that. But I also saw us take a piece of what the other said and integrate that into our own opinion as well. And that's what that looks like, right? And I can have somebody saying defund the police, and some people say, but not all police are bad, right? And it's like, both can be true. Not all police are bad, but that doesn't mean that they don't deserve a big ass cut in their budget as well. They will still be able to do their jobs, and their jobs are still designed to be able to be done with less funding. We have been cutting the education system's budget for years, and even more so now, right? And we're still able to function.
Mm-hmm. Well,
And
right.
Functioning, but I think too, like we forget that the police's job isn't to do everything that it's been doing. The police's job is to enforce the law and keep people safe. And what we've seen this summer, and since the beginning of time, and especially since like 2013, after Trayvon Martin was killed and his murderer was acquitted, we've seen so many people lose their lives by the hands of the police when the police aren't, that's not supposed to be their job.
Right.
So if we defund the police and we take that money to where it needs to go towards prevention programs or towards like better healthcare and things like that, to betterment of schools, so that we can stop the cycle, and then police don't have to worry about that anymore.
Yeah, and a lot of these, like, understand that defund the police, and it's not to you guys, it's for like the audience. Understand that defunding the police does not just mean we're going to, you know, lower wages for polices or whatever like that. We're going to stop recruiting more police. Like, understand, defund the police means, one, polices do not need military equipment. They do not need all of that. Secondly, at the end of the day, polices don't need to be there for, like Lucero said, for every single thing in our lives. Sometimes you need social workers, right? Sometimes you need therapists, you need other things. That's, and our justice system is so fucked up. Like, even, I'm a little more radical in this part. I'm all about prison abolition, of the simple fact that you don't even know, prisons don't even do anything but make more prisons. And actually, you're more likely to create a crime coming out of prison, right? You have to understand, prison is supposed to, in theory, which is what they tell us, but it's not true. Prison is supposed to reintegrate you into society and all this stuff. But even think about it. If it's supposed to really reintegrate you into society, why can't they vote? Why can't they get another job? Why can't they do this and that, right? You need to have programs to help these people, right? Because some of these, well, quote unquote, help these people, right? To make them better, right? You never know what in the hell they're going through and shit like that. Like, at the end of the day, you got to treat these people like human beings. Stop treating them like animals. Of like, if we just take all of these people and put them somewhere else outside of our society, we don't have to worry about them anymore. No. Prison does not do anything but makes more prisons. We need more, what's the word? I'm losing the word. This is why.
Rehabilitation?
Yes. Rehabilitation centers and programs and stuff like that can help these people, right? I keep saying help, but I hate the whole, like, the word of help.
And those rehabilitation programs are the ones that get the least funding.
Because it's all a scam. It's all a business. It's all
a loop.
It's, yeah.
Exactly. Private. My own college benefit from the labor that comes from private prisons. That's the crazy thing.
Our colleges. It's all one.
It's so fucking crazy to think about. Like, I didn't even know that until, like, my friend who was like trying to become like a scholar, activist type thing, is like, she told me about it and I was like, no, are you serious? Not like researching. It was like, what the fuck? Like, I didn't notice, and a lot of people don't notice, like, how much we are profiting off of these private prisons. And some people don't even know who is fighting these forest fires. Prisoners. A lot of people don't even know that. Like,
honestly, I didn't know that.
Yeah, for little to no pay.
Probably none.
Yeah. If it weren't for Twitter, we wouldn't know.
I remember, like, a few years ago on the ballot, it said, like, should we remove the word slavery from the Constitution, or from, like, the Colorado Constitution? But that's because, I mean, it does get used in prisons.
But what good does the removing the word do?
Yeah, all they were gonna do is just remove the word, not even remove the practice, but remove.
We're gonna keep doing slavery, but like, we're just gonna remove the word and we'll call it something else, and so people won't think it's slavery anymore. And no, technically it will be, but like,
that's crazy.
Don't tell nobody.
Slavery has never truly been abolished. It's just it's just been reformed multiple times, from Reconstruction, from being like, oh, let us make a bank so we can get all of your money and let's invest it for us. Let's do sharecropping, where literally we are making you work for us in debt. And since you cannot do math or anything like that, you don't even know if you're out of debt or not. We're just going to let you keep working for us, but save your free.
Mm-hmm.
To mass incarceration and yada, yada, yada. There's so
They
much.
just name it different things. They just use different fancy words.
Exactly.
Yeah. And don't tell us we don't got nothing to be mad about. We got so much to be mad about. Okay? And that's why these riots happen. That's why we, again, like we have been emphasizing throughout this whole thing, we have tried everything. So when you come up with a better solution, then you can tell us not to be angry.
Or when you make the changes.
Or when you make the change, right? When you come up with a solution to the problem, then maybe we'll stop. Maybe. But the work is never done, so.
Actually, I mean, I was thinking too, because when we were talking about the police, I was talking to my dad yesterday, how like the justice system is totally rigged, but everything is in the hands of the police. Even something as small and trivial as like speed challenges, basically. So if a cop sees you in your car driving and they perceive that you are having a speed challenge or like are starting to like do that, even if you're going under the speed limit, even if you're doing the speed limit, if the cop perceives a speed challenge, then they can pull you over, give you a ticket, and or arrest you. So that's like all, even something so small as like accelerating, your life is in the cop's hand because they can just do what they can say, oh yeah, that's what they were doing, and then all of a sudden you're in the court system, you're in the prison system, you've got tickets or whatever, and it just stacks and stacks.
Mm-hmm.
But all that power is in that one police officer's hands. It's written in the law like that.
Yeah. And it shouldn't be.
What the?
And no person, even governing people, should have that amount of power. It shouldn't. And they do. Unfortunately, they do. And I love Congresswoman Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez. She is she constantly gets made fun of for having been a waitress previous to being a congresswoman. But she said Congress people, government employees exist to serve the people, not to be governing. So there is no shame in her having been a waitress before she was a congresswoman. Because she's not an all-powerful, almighty, all-knowing. And suddenly we treat police officers like they are almighty, all-powerful, and all-knowing. And then there's the argument that, like, who are you gonna call when something is going down? You know, somebody's threatening you. Here's another fun fact for you. Police officers technically don't have to respond. Technically, I could call the cops. They can get there and refuse to provide me the service of defending me.
How many times have you heard of people calling the police and waiting 20, 30, 2 hours for the police to get there? Your life, yeah. Like that's happened to my family.
Mm-hmm. And who arrives usually first? Firefighters or an ambulance?
Yeah. Oh. An ambulance arrives before the cops.
Exactly.
They already know. They already know.
And they are frontline. They are frontline fighters. And I'm going to plug this in here because it's so important to me. Breonna Taylor was a frontline worker.
Mm.
What do you call ambulance? What are they called? There's a specific term. I'm sorry? An MT?
EMT.
EMT. And that's what she was, right?
Bro,
literally, like somebody so important was still suffered consequences of sleeping in her own home. I can't. I don't have the right words for it. I don't think I do. And Tony, go ahead. I just don't think I have the right words.
Did you hear that BS? That bullshit. Fuck, that bullshit plea that they try to make her boyfriend say.
Yeah.
No.
Basically, it might correct me for any information I get wrong, but basically they're trying to make him plead that if he says that Breonna Taylor basically helped him like sell drugs and all that stuff outside of her house and stuff like that, that they will um, either shorten his sentence or they will like put him on probation, something like that. I forgot which one, but basically they're trying to like tarnish her name in a sense,
That's
and
disgusting.
it's terrible.
Disgusting.
Don't EMTs have to get drug tested constantly
Mhm.
to be able to work their jobs?
Probably.
Stupid. Like it just doesn't make any sense to me how we bootlickers will stand up and try to defend cops. My dad is a cop, my brother, etc. We get it. Not all cops are bad. We get that. Not all cops speak up when they see bad behavior either. And that's what makes the system fucked up.
That's the thing too. Like, it's not about the individual cop. It's about the system as a whole. Because
Yeah.
I have somebody in my family who is a cop, and I love him very, very much, and I respect him, and I obviously don't want anything bad to happen to him. But at the same time, I recognize that even though he is a good person and he is a good cop, at least from what I've seen, there is still a system as a whole that he works for or with, or I don't know if he works against it or whatever. But it's not about the individual cop. And there shouldn't be any bad cops.
Mm-hmm.
And even if there wasn't any bad cops, even if all cops were great, again, it's still the system that was created to be bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I remember I had to have a conversation with my mom about that. Because I remember I had a poster when I was protesting and it had ACAB, ACAB, which means all cops are bastards. He was like, not all cops. I'm like, do you understand what we're saying? Like, I'm not saying all cops are bad. But what we're saying is all cops come from a system that is inherently racist and bad. So yeah, all cops are bastards because they come from that system. Doesn't mean they're all bad, no. But that's the system that they come from.
Mm-hmm.
And
But I mean, there was also this video of I think she worked for TSA, which is like a federal agency, right?
Yeah.
But she was a Black woman in her uniform, and she got pulled over on her way to work by a white cop, and he was like harassing her. And from still being technically from the same system, even her, just because of the color of her skin, had to go through that.
Mm-hmm.
And she said in her video, she was like, if I wasn't wearing this uniform, I'd be dead right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's the unfortunate, no, it's not even unfortunate. It's just ugly. It's the ugly truth we live in. And that's what prompts people like us to speak up. Those incidents, because they're not just incidents. They are reoccurring. They are a trend. There's data to back it up. There's video evidence, photo evidence to back it up. And you just can't stay silent. That life, Breonna Taylor's life, may not have been my life, but I'm going to speak up. And we're not going to let that die. All right? Because it matters. It matters, and it could have been anyone. Right? As long as they fit the profile. And her being an EMT, her being a frontline fighter against not just crime, as we mentioned, ambulances are usually first to arrive on the scene before the cops. That didn't protect her either. The fact that she was sleeping in her house, her private property, didn't protect her. So what's next? What has to happen? Like, it's so weird to even let that come out of my mouth, right? Is when is enough? Because enough was a really fucking long time ago. At least for me.
You know, it's funny too. People will say, like, in retaliation of Black Lives Matter, they'll say all lives matter. But then when we say like, then they'll turn around and say like, not all cops are bad. So like, if you're generalizing, then you're not.
Right.
Did y'all see that thing that happened on Twitter during 9/11?
No.
Oh.
It was that all buildings matter.
all buildings matter, all days matter, right? Like, do you hear how offensive that is?
Exactly.
Do you hear that? No, 9/11 doesn't matter. All days matter.
Yeah.
All tragedies, all terrorist acts matter. 9/11, not special. Excuse me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or oh my God, there was something else, and then I keep. But yeah, it's offensive to say all days matter or all buildings matter on 9/11. So it's offensive to say all lives matter when we're saying Black Lives Matter, right? Because then the people saying all lives matter turn around and say, well, you should have entered this country legally, or you shouldn't have got caught at the border, right? And it's like, oh, so then do all lives really matter? Do they really? Okay. What about the kids in cages? What about
resisting? He resists. He should die. It's like, what?
why would I not resist arrest when you don't have a feasible reason to arrest me? What if I'm just sitting on a park bench? Like, you're under arrest.
But that's probably also written in the, I mean, I'm not sure, but that's also probably written in the law that if a cop perceives danger, no matter what you're doing, then they can arrest you, then they can tase you, any necessary kind of thing.
Right.
I know, and it's just like it doesn't give them a reason to shoot on sight, and that's the thing that makes me so pissed off. Like,
and if you feel so unsafe, then don't be a cop. That's your job. Choose another job.
Right. If you have that giddiness or that jumpiness, and maybe you shouldn't have passed training. Maybe you shouldn't have gotten approved. And training takes what, 2 months?
I think it's like 8.
In many other countries, it's 2 years, or the equivalent of either the equivalent of an associate's or bachelor's degree to become a police officer. The point is that our restrictions or our requirements to become a police officer are so light. And when they shouldn't be. If it's as important as of a job as people want to make it out to be, if they are really to protect and serve, then they need a way longer time in school, not unlearning to profile, right? And learning that how to really serve and protect their communities, not just themselves.
And how to protect without killing somebody.
Yeah. Y'all get finished with this, but like, I kind of gotta go real quick.
Okay.
Yeah. I have a resident to deal with.
Should we
right away
and wait for you, or?
No, it's gonna take a while. It's
okay. Here's what we can do. Let's go ahead and do the outro real quick. That way you can stop recording, and yeah, I'll just find somewhere to cut it off.
Okay. Apologies.
Okay. You're okay.
Just
Are you gonna hop off?
Yeah. I thought I was gonna do a quick outro, but okay.
Okay, we'll do the quick outro. Okay. Well, thank you so much for listening to Power of the People podcast. We hope you sound off in the comments and let us know what your thoughts are on all of this. The most important thing, as is in the title of this video, is that Black Lives Matter is not a trend and will never just be a trend. It is something very important. It is a movement, and we may not see the results in our lifetime, but we are fighting to be able to do so one day. Thank you all so much for watching. Make sure you check out our social medias. We are powertothepeoplepod@gmail.com. So let us know if you have any suggestions on people we should feature on the podcast. And make sure to follow our Instagram @powertothepeoplepod. Bye.
Bye.